Welcome to another episode of Video Game Therapy. I am VGTR and it's officially November, and as we steam full speed ahead to the brand new consoles, it's important to not forget what's behind us. It's no secret that gaming has come a long way over the current generation, and it's also no secret that the gaming world is notoriously unpredictable, with disappointments and surprises along the way. AAA critically acclaimed titles that turned out to be less than promised, or games picked to fall by the wayside, becoming global bestsellers. In this video, we take a look back through 7 years of the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and I give you my picks for the biggest disappointments and surprises from each year. So it's the back end of 2013 and I'm ready to get into some fresh games on my brand new console, but there's not much choice. So I lined my pockets with my Christmas money, took a trip down to Asda to pick up some brand new games for my PS4. In years gone by, Knack has become something of a meme, and for good reason. I mean, look at the fucking state of him. But 2013 me was excited to dive into Sony's new 3D platformer. Sony have had great success over the years with these kind of games, and my expectation would be that this would be no different, but it just wasn't fun. It's painfully obvious looking back that Sony were desperate to put out a game to cater to audiences that may not be interested in blasting the hell out of enemies with guns, i.e. non-mature audiences. The game wasn't made out of passion with the intention of taking platform gaming to new heights, but out of a necessity and to send a message to consumers that Sony can still cater to all audience in an era oversaturated with first-person shooters. Unfortunately, gamers sniffed this out pretty quickly and Knack became the meme it is today. Also, who calls their game Knack? Knack? Fucking stupid. Which game surprised me in 2013? Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Why? Because fucking pirates, that's why. Personally, I have a love-hate relationship with the Assassin's Creed franchise. Assassin's Creed 1, shit. Assassin's Creed 2, loved it. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, shit. The other one, shit. Assassin's Creed 3, So they were coming off the back of 3 games that didn't live up to Assassin's Creed 2. So my expectations for this game were pretty low. So why did you buy it then? Because there was nothing else. Anyway, to my surprise, this game is actually fucking awesome. You are a pirate. You do all the things that pirates do. You have a ship, you trade, you steal, you fight, you kill, you board other ships, you enter huge scale naval battles, you have storms and weather to contend with, you can find ancient Mayan temples, you can hunt, you can loot, you can capture forts, recruit pirate buddies, build a crew, build a fleet, have your own pirate cove, find fucking hidden treasure. And then it dawned on me. This game is Pirates of the Caribbean. It's Wind Waker for adults. But you know what it isn't? Assassin's Creed. 2014 was a strange year for the current generation, if you ask me. I had the latest and greatest consoles sat in my TV unit, but I found myself playing more Wii U than I did PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. It's not that there weren't fun experiences to be had on the new generation consoles, there just weren't many, especially when it came to games that were being exclusively released on these new consoles. There were no games that promised big, that gave gamers a real reason to go out and spend 50 quid on a next generation experience rather than paying £15 less to get it on the 360 or the PS3. There was one game though, one game that promised a truly next generation experience if you bought it on the PS4 or Xbox One, one whose graphics were beyond anything we'd seen before. So yeah, Watch Dogs is my biggest disappointment of 2014. It's a simple case of what we were promised is not what we got, and not just in the graphical department either. Watch Dogs was sold to us like it was set in a living, breathing Chicago where everyone could be interacted with and everyone had stories behind their characters. And whilst that was kind of true, it also kind of wasn't true. Aside from being able to find out the name, age, and a couple of facts about each person, you couldn't interact with them, you couldn't talk to them, you couldn't do anything. The lead up to its launch had us all believing you played as a vigilante hacker who had the ability to do some awesome things to manipulate the environment during the game. It gave me excitement that we'd see some really inventive and unique ways to complete missions, giving players a level of autonomy that we hadn't had before. But that just wasn't the case. The gameplay was flat, and 99% of the time you'd just end up in a gunfight. If you were free roaming the open world, there was basically nothing to do. It was just a big disappointment. Lucky for me, I only borrowed the game off my brother, sparing my wallet that 50 quid sting. Remember when I said Knack was just built as a necessity and didn't deliver on the platforming experience I wanted? Step forward, Rayman Legends. This game is an absolute masterclass in platforming and far and away the biggest surprise for me in 2014. I mean, how long has it been since we've had a good Rayman game? But this is a fucking masterpiece. The levels are designed to near perfection, the soundtrack is sensational, and it's even worked into the gameplay of the game. There's an inventive and extremely entertaining co-op mode, the world is hammered full of secret areas and unlockables, mini games, and even levels from Rayman Origins. The game is really one of the best platformers I have ever played. Let's start, as always, with the disappointment. 2015 was a nightmare to be a Konami fan. So if you don't know the tale, I'll make it as short as I possibly can. In 2010, Konami released a mobile card game called Dragon Collection. Long story short, it did really well. Like, really well. Turning a much higher overall profit with way less production costs than their projects in the AAA video game world. This, coupled with their successes in the pachinko machine industry in Japan, left executives of the company wondering if large-scale video games were worth their time and money. One exec of the company by the name of Hideo Kojima didn't vibe with this new approach. Behind the scenes, shit went down, and by March of 2015, Kojima's name had been removed from the Konami website and even from the projects he was working on. It was soon made clear that Kojima would be staying with the company to finish the projects he was working on, but that his days were numbered with Konami. Fast forward to July, and despite the excitement surrounding the PT demo, Silent Hills was officially axed by Konami, and you can consider this the first part of our 2015 Konami disaster. The PT demo for Silent Hills was all kinds of creepy and had horror fans like myself foaming at the mouth for a game that looked like it was about to set a new benchmark for video game horror. But the corporate dickheads at Konami weren't quite finished yet. No. Despite allowing Kojima to stay on to finish production on Metal Gear Solid 5, it was reported that he and other senior members of staff working on the game were demoted from producers to contractors. And Kojima was also set up in an office on a different floor from the rest of the team working on the game, and he was only allowed to communicate with them via proxy. What this meant for Metal Gear 5 was that whilst the game looked fantastic and the gameplay was among the smoothest and most satisfying I've ever played, the game had basically zero of that Metal Gear charm. The narrative was bleak and wishy-washy, the bosses were less than what we're used to, and the ending of the game was just downright unfinished. Literally to the point of Snake and the protagonist Skullface sitting face to face in the back of a jeep for a whole 3 minutes of unskippable cutscene where the two literally stare at each other and don't say a word. It was clear that the game was unfinished at release, and it was a devastating culmination to the series most responsible for my love of video games. On to more positive things then, and unlike 2014, 2015 was packed full of incredible next generation titles such as The Witcher 3, Bloodborne and Fallout 4, and whilst all of these were incredible games, none of them really surprised me as much as they just did what was expected of them. What did surprise me though was this game, Ori and the Blind Forest. Until now, there wasn't really any Xbox exclusives that I was actually bothered about. I found myself buying games on the Xbox One just because I felt sorry for it. And when Ori and the Blind Forest came along, it just looked like an indie project, nothing to get too excited over. But then I played it. My god, what an outstanding journey this game is. Up to this point, Metroidvanias were games I enjoyed, but they never stood tall above immersive AAA adventures. Ori and the Blind Forest changed all of that. It's just a beautiful game with a brilliantly realised and emotional story that will no doubt capture your heart if you give it the opportunity. Its gameplay is smooth and masterful, and a welcome departure from its Metroidvania brethren, taking character movement and level traversal to new heights. I promise you, this is a god tier game.
Will I get bored playing this game?
No.
Are there planets the size of Earth?
Yeah.
Can I rename Earth something better?
No.
Is Earth in this game?
No. Well, maybe. Something Earth-like, let's say, might be no.
What the fuck is this? What we were promised was a universe-sized sandbox brimming with adventure, endless discovery to be made, space wars, factions, combat, mining, trade, PvE, PvP, even the centre of the universe. And what we got was the video game equivalent of a petrol station deep fill sandwich, mostly plain and definitely hard to swallow. In a world oversaturated with first-person shooters, companies churning out the same game over and over again, we were crying out for a shooter that would change things up. Companies have been trying for a while now, seemingly throwing anything at FPSs to try and get their game to stand out in an oversaturated market. Titanfall was Call of Duty but with Transformers, Wolfenstein was Call of Duty but with Nazis, Destiny was Halo but with Call of Duty. None of which were bad games, but none of which succeeded in breaking the walls of the tried and tested tropes of the modern first-person shooter. Doom 2016 was a rebirth of godly proportions. It was ID Software's first pop at a Doom game since 2004's Doom 3, and that kind of went down flatly among its competitors, meaning that ID Software's last properly successful Doom title was Doom 2, released in 1994. It had been over 2 decades since this company had any real success in the genre they originally revolutionised. Not only was it a rebirth for the company, it was a rebirth for the genre in general. A breath of fresh air amongst thick clouds of first-person shooters, all attempting hyper-realistic graphics, accurate sound design of bullets flying past your ears, multiplayer-focused experiences, and the constant reach to visually simulate what it's like to be in a real war. ID Software tore up the book and said, if you want players to feel true immersion, for their heartbeat to race, for sweat to fill their brow, then you need to concentrate on 3 things: speed, intensity, and fear. Why? Because even if he looks real, I know Klaus over there with his broom-handle Mauser isn't actually there, and I don't fear him. I also know that he isn't going to leave his cover and start running towards me like a madman, and on the off chance that he does, I know that I can just find somewhere to hide on this big and open sprawling map. Doom replaced Klaus with aggressive, psychotic demons from hell who literally pummel towards you with no regard for the bullets you fire back. Doom also made these encounters take place in tight, well-designed arenas, dialing the intensity up to 10, meaning you could run but you couldn't hide. Doom 2016 is nothing short of genius, and with its sequel Doom Eternal out now, you can pick this game up for pittance. So if you haven't played it, now's the time. Destiny 2's coming, Destiny 2's coming, Destiny 2's coming.
Destiny 2 is a blast out of the gate thanks to its excellent co-op shooter gameplay and strong storytelling in the campaign.
What the fuck are you talking about? Did we even play the same game? Destiny 1 I pumped a lot of hours into. Was it a great game? Not really, but was it satisfying to loot and level up with friends and then take on the raid to complete the main story? Sure. What Destiny 2 promised was a more complete experience, and one that succeeded where the original fell short. Destiny 2 at launch was a fucking shit show. In almost every department, it was a downgrade from its predecessor. Don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people play it and love it now, and I'm sure they've done great things to turn this one around. But if you played this game at launch and you tell me that you loved it, then I'm going to tell you why you're a fucking idiot. Remember when I said FPS games were trying new things in order to make their games stand out amongst the crowd, and how Doom developers had upped the speed, intensity and fear in order to make one of the best shooters of the last decade? Well, Destiny 2's tactics was to make everybody playing the game feel like they were playing it on God mode. We're going to remove difficulty levels so everybody plays the game the same. We're going to remove leaderboards because if you're shit, we don't want you to know about it. And we're going to make the most unthreatening and docile enemies known to man so you can just bullet tear through them like a room full of balloons. They barely fight back, they just move closer to you. And not as a way of making the player more fearful of the enemy, but just to make the targets bigger for you in case you couldn't hit them when they were slightly further back and smaller. So if you enjoyed this game at launch, it's because you fell for the con. You found joy in being good at a game which was impossible not to be good at. There was no learning curve, there was no challenge, and there was absolutely no reason to play it. Things weren't all bad in 2017 though. 6 months prior to the release of Destiny 2, Square Enix published a game that largely went unnoticed. It was a sequel to the PS3 title named Nier, which itself was a sequel to the Drakengard series. Ever heard of it? No. I hadn't either. The game I'm talking about, of course, is Nier Automata. Even though it took me a while to acknowledge this game's existence, it took me even longer to appreciate its value. But like the best action RPG games, with perseverance comes reward. The game turned out to be one of the most mind-bending, diverse and captivating experiences I've ever played. It's one of those rare gems whose message feels like they speak more to you as an individual and to us as a society than they do within the game's world. Like the whole game is a metaphor for something more profound. Its gameplay styles are consistently changing, keeping the game ever present and interesting. Its music is undoubtedly some of the best music ever made for a game, and whilst there's so many great things to say about this game, it's overshadowed by one fact: you've probably never played it. What was my biggest disappointment for 2018? Well, I was thinking I could be super obvious with it and say that Metal Gear Survive was an absolute embarrassment to the franchise, or I could try be really quirky with my answer and talk about how even though I loved the game, there was a lot of elements of Red Dead Redemption 2 that actually disappointed me. In the end though, I decided to go right down the middle and pick Fallout 76 as my biggest disappointment for 2018. I know in itself that seems like kind of an obvious choice, but Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 were such good games, and even though fans were skeptical of taking this beloved franchise online, I don't think that anyone was prepared for quite how bad it was. The choice to remove NPCs from the world made the post-apocalyptic world feel, well, post-apocalyptic, but like really, really post-apocalyptic, like right after it had happened, when there was nothing left.
My God, there's no one here.
The world felt empty and carried almost none of the charm from previous Fallout games. What it did carry though in abundance was the technical issues that we're used to seeing in Bethesda titles. The game was fraught with bugs and glitches compounded by server issues and radio silence from Bethesda on what they were going to do to try and fix these problems. Ironically, I had some real fun playing this game, but for all the wrong reasons. There are only so many times that glitches and bugs are funny until you turn the game off and never turn it back on. Unfortunately, that's what happened to me. By 2018, developers were well versed in utilising the full potential of the current generation of consoles. The Witcher 3, Uncharted 4, Horizon Zero Dawn, Final Fantasy 15 and 2018 added Red Dead Redemption 2 and God of War to an ever-growing list of games that looked incredible. But whilst thousands of people were working around the clock at some of the world's biggest game studios, crunching on some of the world's biggest and boldest video game titles, something magical was happening in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in Vancouver. Amateur video game creators were working on a game that would surprise critics and gamers alike. The concept of the game is simple. The main character, Madeline, is struggling with her mental health. She decides to challenge herself to climb Celeste Mountain, presumably in an attempt to take back control of her head. What unfolds between the base of the mountain and the summit is a beautiful journey of self-discovery. You would have to be subhuman to not fall in love with the characters you meet along the way, and that's only the story. The gameplay is among the tightest and most precise in any game I've ever played, and makes for both a challenging and satisfying experience. All of this, plus a sublime soundtrack and an explosive art style, makes this easily one of the most memorable experiences you can have right now, and proof that in the video game world, small ideas can still achieve big things. Eeny, meeny, miny, let's talk Gears 5. Do I think it's a bad game? No, it's actually pretty decent. So why did it disappoint me so much? Well, when I think about the best action adventure game series, generally speaking, I see a regular pattern. They make about 2 or 3 of them and then they either disappear, like Max Payne, Fear, Bioshock. Then you get games that go on longer because after those first 2 or 3 games, or in some cases every single time, they reinvent themselves to keep themselves relevant. I'm talking about your Final Fantasies, Resident Evils, God of Wars. All these games have undergone immense changes to keep themselves relevant and playable. Gears, though, is now on entry number 5 of the series, and aside from graphical updates and a few new quality of life improvements, Gears 5 is just a stone's throw away from Gears 1. I don't know, maybe it's the fact that we're now on the 3rd studio to be creating Gears games, and maybe they feel a responsibility to stick to the tried and tested formula. For me, though, it's time. Gears needs to either be put to bed or reinvented. Next month I have a video coming out summarising 2020 in gaming, meaning our surprise for 2019 is the last on the list, and by a stroke of luck it's the most surprising of all. A Star Wars game published by EA and not a single microtransaction in sight. Seriously though, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a sensational game. It's the Star Wars game we should have got years ago. Thank you so much for watching this video, and congratulations to this week's winner. You couldn't have just synced that up. You've won all this stuff, and all you have to do is like and comment on the video to claim your prize, and we'll be in contact to tell you how we're going to get it to you. On that note, like the video if you enjoyed what you saw, subscribe to the channel if you are new here. Also, if you subscribe to the channel, you could be next week's winner, providing that you meet the terms and conditions, which are in the description. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.